everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making the Windsor bracelet. It's going to be featuring one of the newer beads, the Rosetta bead, as well as one of ours, the Bowtrio. Gather up your materials that were listed before this video part or below. You can check out the links to purchase from us at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. So we're going to get started with the actual bracelet here, and I have a 2-needle project. So we're working with 2 needles on 0.006 wildflower beading thread in the gray color. I have about 6 feet of thread and a needle on each end. I have my clasp here, and I've actually taken the clasp apart so it's just one end and then the other end. And I have a wire guard. The wire guard is, if you haven't used it, it's just a kind of arched bead here that has a metal tube on either side, and when you put it onto your thread and needle, your thread is going to just kind of hang out in the base of that stop bead right in there as you see me pull it. And I'm going to make sure that I have equal amounts of thread on either side of that needle, so it's just going to kind of hang out there in the base. What this is going to do is prevent the thread from rubbing on the metal clasp. You can then slide on your clasp and let that also drop down, so that way it's sitting inside that little U shape of the wire guard or the wire protector. And if your thread wants to twist, just kind of make it cooperate and go in there. All right, so once you have it untwisted, there we go. There we go, put our clasp in there. We're gonna come out and start to put on the center of our beads here. And I'm gonna come out of this and we're gonna use one of our 8 seed beads in that Crystal Lab color and let that drop down with both needles going through that same 8 seed bead down towards the clasp. Again, this is a good point to make sure that your needles are actually equal on either side. That's going to get our clasp on, and then from here we're going to go right in and get ready to put in our Bowtrios, which are going to sit with our StormDuos and our Rosettes. So we are going to actually add one more of our 8 seed beads. Go in 1 and then 2. And then from there, we're going to put on our first Bowtrio beads. If you're unfamiliar with the Bowtrios, they are 3 holes. So when we put the first one on and do this first center row of the bracelet, we are literally going to be going through the center. When we go through the center of the Bowtrio, you want to take both needles through that center hole in the same direction. So one's going to go through, then the other one's going to go through. The Bowtrios tend to have a fairly large center hole. So if I use 11-0s, sometimes they can kind of get eaten and go inside of the actual Bowtrio, which I don't want to happen. So to start out, we are actually going to use 1 8-0 after the Bowtrio. And you'll notice the Bowtrio I faced so that the bow side is facing towards the side that we're basically adding beads on. So another 8-0 is going to go on, both needles through that same 8-0. And then we're going to separate out the needles. So the needles are going to separate at this point, that we're going to have one of them going towards the right and one of them going towards the left. Before and after the Bowtrio is always going to be that situation where we have an 8 seed bead with needles going through in the same direction. On the right needle, I want you to put a 15 seed bead. Then I want you to put a StormDuo. The StormDuo that you put on, you're going to put on through the thicker side of the StormDuo, coming out through that thinner side of the StormDuo. Then put on another 15, and then you're going to put on your Rosette. So your Rosetta is going to go on, and you're making sure, I'm working with the right side here, I'm making sure that the Rosetta is going to be facing up. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So with that left needle, same thing, 15, StormDuo through the thicker side, coming out through that turned bow side, 15 on, and then we're going to add the Rosetta again. Through we go, into the other side. Give a little tight pull, and you'll see the effect that we're going with them kind of hugging the actual Rosetta bead. To pump them out a little bit more and to add a little bit more interest, we're going to add some 15 seed beads to the side of the Rosetta, which are just going to hang out right there for us to kind of decorate on the side. So I have 5 on my needle. I need 6 and 7. And then we're gonna take the thread through the side of the Rosetta that it's coming out of, and that's gonna push those seed beads along the side there to make it look a little bit like it's set. And I went back and forth adding a halo bead in here, and it just wasn't sitting right, so I took the halo out and I decided just to do it more simplistically with some 15-0 seed beads. So on the left needle now, I'm gonna repeat that where I put 7 seed beads on, and these are 7 15-0s, also in that Crystal Lab color. I'm coming out the top of the Rosetta, and I'm gonna go into the bottom, and then out the top. Again, give a nice tight little pull, and that decorates that side of the Rosetta with my 15-0s. Coming out then, I'm going to repeat the StormDuo along with the Bowtrio, but this time they're gonna face in the opposite direction. So when I go on here, I'm going to put a 15 onto my thread and needle on each side. Then when I pick up my next StormDuo, I want to pick it up for this Windsor bracelet through the skinnier side and come out the back side. So you're picking it up in that curve and coming out the back side. And then while you're there, pick up another 15-0. So we have 15-0, then we have our StormDuo, and then we have our 15-0. From there, it's time to put on our next Bowtrio bead. Remember, we always have an 8-0 seed bead before and after the Bowtrio, and this time the Bowtrio is going to face in towards that Rosetta. So you're going to take your 8-0 seed bead and put the needle and thread on both ways. Then you're going to put on your Bowtrio, again through both needles, and then on goes your 8-0 seed bead through both needles as well. Let that all drop down next to your Rosetta, and that's going to finish out the first grouping of this actual center and the components that we're adding together to make the bracelet. As you're building your bracelet, what I wanted to show you is that center connection. So I did a couple so you could see them, that center connection. What we're gonna do basically is build a little diamond. When we come back and go through the exterior holes of these beads, we're gonna connect into that 8-0 seed bead that sits on the side. So as you're ending through one of your round trio beads, you have your 11 or your 8-0 seed bead rather on there. And what I'm going to do then is take another 8-0, put it on both the left and the right needle. And then from there, join again. We're not doing right angle weave, so we're just doing the second bead goes in the same direction. So it's going through. So you have one 8-0 where you put both needles through in the same direction. Separate those 8-0s and put them through one bead each, and then bring them together again through one bead. So you can see when you kind of pull it, you get one bead on the right hand cord, one bead on the left hand cord, and then they're held together by the beads at the top and the bottom where the needle goes through in both in the same direction. From here then you're going to go in and continue on adding in your round trios and your little Rosetta cabs. I have 2 more components that I'm going to be doing, adding in a total of 5. You may need 6 depending on your wrist size. And then from here we'll come back and we'll start grabbing on the sides and also making sure that our Rosettas are all facing in the same direction. Once you have your bracelet your desired length, it's time to repeat the other side where we put on the wire guard along with the clasp. Now remember, I had taken the clasp off and had the 2 pieces separate so that way I didn't have to have them both on as I made my bracelet. Coming out your last Bowtrio, go ahead and put 2 8-0 seed beads onto your needle. So we're going to put 2 8-0s on, 1 and then 2. And both needles again going in the same direction. Just with one of my needles to start, I'm going to go in and go through the wire guard, which I kind of have sitting in the clasp already in that loop, because I'm going to go through that wire guard, through that little channel. Well, my clasp fell off, so I'm going to have to put that back on there. And go through the other channel on that wire guard so that you're coming down through that end. When you are coming down through that end, make sure that you're sewing through the clasp if it didn't already stay on there, and push that section of this push clasp, ClaspGarten push clasp into that wire guard. Once you have that on them, we're going to reinforce by taking the other thread and needle and doing the same thing, going through that wire guard And this will put 2 strands of thread through the wire guard and through the clasp, which you want to make sure always to have anyway when you are putting on a clasp. You never just want 1 thread through. The clasp is where you're going to get the most tension and you're going to get the most kind of pressure on your piece. So you'll want to make sure that you have 2 strands coming out the end of that clasp. Go ahead and pull down on that there. You can see those 2 threads hanging out. And I want you to take both needles through that first 8/0 seed bead. Not through the second, just through the first and out. 1 needle then we're going to put to the left and 1 needle we're going to put to the right. You will have a little bit of give in the middle of the bracelet. I don't want to pull too tight because we still want it to kind of sit correctly, and we're going to kind of push things down and make sure that it's sitting right and that the ends are sitting right. So I don't want to pull it so super tight that that middle is super rigid. So just let it kind of relax a little bit. 1 needle to the left, 1 needle to the right, and we're going to get to the outer edge. To get to the outer edge, grab some of your 15s, and we're going to do about 7 15s with both the right and the left needle. So the thread that goes down the right side after I put these 15s on is always going to stay to the right side. You're going to go from that second 8/0 that you're coming out of there, you're coming out of the first one, and grab those 7 15s to just make that arch going from one hole to the other hole of that Bowtrio. So again, I have on 7, so I'll pick up 7 here. And then once you get your 7 15s, we're going to get ready to go down the side here of the piece, making or catching on to all of our second open holes on the sides, as well as making sure that our rosettas are sticking straight up. We're going to be attaching and kind of grabbing on to the middle of that actual seed beads that wrap around. So to add in our first of our accent along the side and catch in, I did it on the right so you could see it with that nice color pop of the 11/0s we're adding in. And I'm going through the StormDuo when coming out of the Bowtrio. And there is a little bit of kind of a difference between the size of those. So what's going to happen is it's going to pull the StormDuo out a little bit. You're going to add 2 11/0s, and the 11/0 color to go along with our Crystal Lab colors is that Duracoat Opaque Ammonite in the Miyuki. You're going to grab the middle 3 15s from that group of 7 that you added. And this is, again, that first one, that Rosetta, you're going to make sure that it's in order. The second one, then, you want to make sure that it sits also facing up. Grab 2 more seed beads after coming out through those 3 seed beads. And then you're going to go through the StormDuo as well as the Bowtrio bead. Let those kind of drop down along your project. And it almost makes like a little frame that goes around it. That's how it got the Windsor name, is that the garden in Windsor has a nice kind of rounded fountain in the middle of their rose garden. So you can see that outer to inner and just kind of those color pops. And now what we're going to do is go in from the outside of the Bowtrio into that middle 8/0 and then back to the outside of the Bowtrio. Along the side, then you'll see I started going down the right hand side so you could see kind of that pattern order. And when you're coming out of the next Bowtrio bead, you add an 8, add 2 11/0 seed beads, and then remember we stuck that 8/0 in there intentionally off to the side a little bit, and you're going to go through that side bead and out, staying on the same side that you're working on. Coming out then, add 2 of your 11s, grab another one of the 8s, and through the next Bowtrio bead. Then when you're done, you're just going to continue going through. You get that nice Xing effect there. And you're going to go through the StormDuo, add your 2 beads of your 11/0, catch on to the middle 3 15s, 2 more on, and continue to build in those X's along the side as well as the seed beads, catching onto the outer holes of those StormDuo beads. So to finish off the bracelet, super easy after you have your little garden kind of expansion and the X's going on. And I want to keep it mainly monotone with that silver and just adding and really making those rosettas pop. On the end here, when you get out your last trio, it's the same as the other side. We're going to add 7 of our 15s. And then once you have those 7 15s on your needle, skip over the first bead and you're going to go into that second 8/0 seed bead. You can see that bridges that gap nicely. Same thing on the other side. Go in and get your 15s on. My 15s are hopping today. And I get those 15s on into my 8/0 seed bead and out. Now we're going to use this opportunity to reinforce the edges. If you would want to, another design element and a design idea, you can come back down the project on the outside edge here with the Bowtrios and just connect the Bowtrios from one to the other with some silver beads if you want to make it look more closed up. I'm going to keep it nice and simple like I have it. I like those X's and just kind of that little highlight of the Rosetta. With one of my strands that has the needle still on, I'm going to go through the wire guard. So I'm coming out the 8/0s. We're going to go through the wire guard, up through the side of it, around the top, down through the other side, and then down through that other side of the wire guard there and out. I have my 2 strands now going through that clasp. Because I have it here, I'm going to go the opposite way because I know which way I started, and I'm going to go the opposite way, going through that wire guard one more time and through the clasp. That's going to get me 3 strands through it, back down the other side of the wire guard, and then back down through that 8/0 seed bead. Once I'm down through that 8/0 seed bead, because my threads are going in opposite directions, I can simply tie a knot. This is the benefit of using 2 threads, or rather than 2 threads, 2 needles rather. And because it's silver in color, or that gray color, I'm not going to see the thread at all. So I'm just tying a square knot, right over left, left over right, give it a nice tight pull and tie. And then with one of the needles, I'll go down the 15s on the right-hand side, take that thread down a little bit further from the end, and then take my thread zap or my thread burner, or in this case my wildfire cord cutter, burn off that thread end, nice and easy. You can tell I just replaced my battery, and then go in here and burn that thread down, making sure that you're not burning through the thread that's already there. Same thing on this one. I'll take the thread back on the other side. That way you're not having the knot, having the thread ends right where the knot is. It's going to protect the knot a little bit, as well as not have that balled up end. So again, over here, burn it down, and then burn that thread down. And there you go. You have the end of your Windsor bracelet. So it has that nice, pretty ClaspGarten clasp on, that netted crystal ball. And then if you are looking to make something a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, go ahead and add an extra Rosetta. I ended up using 5, which would be 10, a full pack of the Bowtrio beads. If you don't want to get a whole nother pack of the Bowtrios, keep in mind you can do this little starting X on both the beginning and the end if you need a bracelet that's going to be longer. If you want to do one that's about 7 to 7 1/4, go ahead and start out with doing that little 1 to 2 beads on each side and 1 before your actual first Bowtrio, and that'll lengthen it a little bit for you. Thanks so much for watching the Windsor bracelet. Remember, you can switch out that Rosetta cab for any 2-hole 6mm cab. You can even change it up, use a 7mm, or have fun putting a disc duo in there as well. If you need any of the materials, remember they were in the beginning of the video, as well as down near that subscribe and that like button. There's links to purchase from us online at PotomacBeads.com, as well as PotomacBeads.eu. As with always, you're more than welcome to hit that like as well as that subscribe button, and you'll get regular updates from us on new projects, new products, and sometimes we even go live. As always, thanks so much for watching, and enjoy making your own Windsor bracelet.